Hi, it's Nick Aster with TriplePundit.com. I'm here at the Sustainable Brands 2013 conference in San Diego, California with James Gibson. He is the Director of Sponsorships for Air New Zealand. And James, tell me a little bit about your position at the company.
Yeah, so I lead most of our partnerships that sit outside of the straight aviation aspect, I guess. So we've got partnerships with the likes of the Department of Conservation in New Zealand, Antarctica New Zealand, and then some of the more traditional commercial type partnerships with the All Blacks and the Air New Zealand Wine Awards and a few different things like that.
Okay, great. Now, conservation, this is the stuff that kind of lines up a little bit more with sustainability, which is what we're talking about at the conference here. What are you guys working on in that regard?
Yeah, we've got two main partnerships, I guess. In that sense, we've got the Department of Conservation and Antarctica New Zealand. The Department of Conservation is a big one for us. It's probably become our most important partnership. It's an interesting one because they're responsible for conservation management within the country. They're a government department, but they also manage most of what we consider the key tourism assets. So they manage all the national parks and the tracks network and a lot of campgrounds and sites that are obviously very important as a tourism organisation. Because we've got reasonably significant environmental aspirations, partnering with them made sense from a conservation perspective, but also because the commercial side lines up from the tourism perspective as well. And so it's a really big one for us. We're investing in about 4 biodiversity projects in and around the National Parks Great Walks network, and we're also lending our marketing hand to assist them to get more people into those sites to experience the natural environment in that regard, and hopefully create more advocates and also more revenue for the department.
Mm-hmm. Great, so this is obviously a good win-win. When you say you invest in conservation or invest in biodiversity, what does that actually translate to? Where does that money go?
Yeah, so we took their advice on what was most needed, but we want it to be based around one of the tourism sites, and so they've selected 4 new biodiversity projects around the Great Walks. And the interesting thing from a New Zealand perspective is that before the arrival of people about 1,000 years ago, there were no predators for birds in particular. So New Zealand really only had birds and some lizards. We had no snakes. We had nothing that predated on those native species. Since the arrival of man, of course, we've got cats and stoats and ferrets and possums and all sorts of things. And so the wildlife has been massively impacted. And so there's a lot of activity around trying to restore some of those natural environments. And there's some very, very rare species. And so those projects are now in place to essentially provide a safe haven within the environment for the native species. So there's a lot of trapping and pest eradication that takes place to enable the natural species to become more prevalent. And we're also involved with carrying quite a lot of birds and animals around the country, so they try and bring animals from one part of the country to another to create more environments that they're in, and obviously that helps with their long-term protection, because some of the species are down to only 100 to 200 animals left. So that's a key part where we can provide that.
And is it working? Success?
Yeah, some really good success. We've only been going for just over a year, but we've had some really good success. 4 of those projects are now fully up and running, and they're looking at being ahead of time with some things. So reintroducing a bird called the takahe onto the Milford Track. The Milford Track is probably our most single iconic activity in New Zealand. The takahe only has 200 breeding pairs left. It was once considered extinct and then was rediscovered, and we're going to reintroduce takahe onto the Milford Track probably in February next year, which is a really big thing within New Zealand. We've carried quite a lot of birds around the country as well, and from a visitation perspective, they've had a 10% increase in the past year since we've been providing marketing support. That only increased 1% over the previous 4 years, so that's quite a significant revenue increase for the department, and also of course gets more people out and amongst the natural environment, which is great because that's where advocates are born, I guess. So it's really positive.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your time, and congrats on the success.
Cool. No worries. Thank you.